If you asked me on Saturday, I'd say absolutely love it. This is the best thing, like mind-blowing, incredible, like it's changed my life. If you asked me today after my experience on Sunday, hours and hours yesterday with hallucinations and large language models driving me crazy, with the vibe coding. Why did they invent this to torture me? Is that what they were thinking?
Until we get to the dead internet theory, where we all will only have bots talking with bots, and there's nothing for humans there.
The dead internet in the sense of like majority is AI generated for AI consumption. We're already there.
In a world drowning in noise, where everyone with a keyboard claims to be an AI guru, one man has been turning chaos into growth engines for over 20 years. He didn't just ride the wave, he was building the surfboard when the ocean was flat. You've seen him on the stand-up by Monday.com. You caught him on Social 3.0. Then the virtual CMO. CMO Secrets. Demand Genius, the winning e-commerce experience. Ooh, aha. Okay, stop the scroll. The man is practically a broadcast network all by himself. But look closer at the reputation. In an industry where most experts struggle to get 3 testimonials, he has a monolith. You have to scroll for days just to see the CEOs who vouch for his work. That isn't just marketing, that is excellence. He's been building growth engines for decades, and he's still ahead of the curve. Please welcome Oren Greenberg.
Can you tell us a few words about yourself, what you do? I saw that you've been on numerous podcasts and AI is the buzzword today. So really looking forward to a discussion today. So what can you tell us?
I work in go-to-market engineering as an advisor and implementer for the larger companies. So I do projects for larger companies and then advise and support heads of marketing or different project leads on the go-to-market side. I use a variety of tools, Clay and A10, Cargo, etc. A lot of the data work, prospecting, CRM automations, workflow setup. I've been doing it for about 20 years. Not the AI thing. AI I've been doing for about 5 years. When OpenAI, before ChatGPT 3 came out, I was using APIs called Babbage and DaVinci. So I was very early on, very pioneering, but I didn't expect the explosion.
The blow.
I didn't expect it. And I'm always amazed at how good these models are. Like you look at Nano Banana now and you're like, wow. And you look at Sora 2 and you're like, wow. And so I had no idea the rate of development would be so rapid. Yeah, I've worked with very large companies, global brands, Investec, Bank, Canon, Lenovo, British Telecom, and lots of different scale-ups. That's I'm quite prolific on the socials, especially in LinkedIn. That's my primary.
So 20 years and the past few years with AI. Love it or hate it? That's the first question that I have in this podcast. So How about AI? How do you see it?
Yeah, so funny. If you asked me on Saturday, I said I'd say absolutely love it. Now, if you asked me today after my experience on Sunday with multiple stalling, I'm looking like working on 3 projects at the same time and hours yesterday with hallucinations and large language models driving me crazy, with the vibe coding.
Model degradation.
Yeah, so I'm really, I'd say extreme oscillation between the two at an insane rate. Like throughout the day, depending on which hour you grab me, I'll either be like, this is the best thing, like mind-blowing, incredible, like it's changed my life. And an hour later, it's like, why do I bother? Like it's like through all of this, like, it's the crap. I should just go learn coding and, become an engineer. I mean, this is like, why did they invent this to torture me? Is that what they were thinking? So it depends on the day and the hour you catch me on.
It's a bit of love-hate relationship, right?
Yes, both at the same time.
Both at the same time. I'm sure there's a word for that, but I'm not 100% what the word is. There's a lot that's been going on in the last 1 year, for example. And you mentioned 11 Labs before and their agentic workflows. And I do say that they are amazing, at least like the progress and the integrations. And we are using it too. And every time I listen to it, I cannot believe it because 5 years ago, I just had an example. 5 years ago, we were text to speech, the a robotic voice, and now it sounds better than I do. And I'm a bit humble on that. And yeah, have you tested or checked out Sesame AI by any chance?
It sounds familiar, but I don't think I've hands-on experienced it yet.
So it's a former co-founder of Oculus, I believe, or something like that. But I mean, there's a team, and they are working on some kind of glasses. And part of that, like product and project, they are creating a new voice model. A new right now they have two voices. It's Maya and one more, and they created a new mathematical model where you can also have emotions, and it takes into account it's a whole discussion, but it takes into account previous discussion as sound, and then it creates emotions, and it's very natural. It's built like a companion. And I would say that right now, that's the best AI for voice that there is. And it's not published, it's just in preview. It's next level compared with the Level Labs, which is like hard to beat right
Yeah,
now.
very interesting. Yeah, I think I've come across it on TikTok videos, but I haven't like played
It is
around with
possible.
the tools. So I don't know what its capabilities are in terms of practical use cases. But yeah, these voice agents, they're mind blowing.
But tell me more. What you mentioned several tools that you are using. Which one would you say that work best? Or is there some kind of performance-based models that you are using? How does that work
Yeah,
in your day-to-day
I
life?
don't think there's such a thing as a best tool. I think you can't really compare a hammer to a screwdriver. I think if you
Yes.
try to use a hammer to do things with screws and screw them in, you're going to get very frustrated, even though you love your hammer and you can use it for so many different things. I'd say probably the most diverse or versatile tool I use probably is Cursor, in that I can
Okay.
access lots of different Python libraries. It has lots of plugins. It has access to lots of different large language models. I'd say that's probably the most diverse tool, but I bounce around the different tools I use for different purposes. So, what I can do with 11 labs with voice, Cursor can't natively do. All the enrichments and integrations that Clay.com have or Cargo, I can't do that in Cursor easily. I'd have to go and integrate and get the API for 160 different vendors and then create what it would be a nightmare. I'd essentially be trying to compete with Clay, which is mad. So I wouldn't say there's best. I said there's different tools for different specialized use cases.
I saw a bit more on your website, and one term that popped to me was the AI gap analysis. Can you explain that for people who maybe haven't heard? And even I'm curious, exactly what are you checking in the company for this AI gap?
Yeah. So fun enough, we just ran it. I have a workshop I'm running later this week, and it's a team of 12 marketers. And the head of marketing was saying to me, "Oh, you need to run the workshop." And I was like, "Well, what's the competence of the team?" And she said, "Well, I'm not totally sure." So I said, "Okay, well, probably need to evaluate their level of knowledge or capability so I can, run the workshop at the right level, because running a workshop for someone who just uses ChatGPT twice a week is not the same as someone who's using
Yes.
NA10 to create workflows." The quiz is really a set of questions that is like an assessment meter, self-diagnosis, to evaluate what your maturity level is at. I'd say on average, for this specific company, the average score was about 33% across the team. And that does sound low, but I'd say the average across all the people who've taken the form now in the hundreds probably be between 40 and 60% max. It's very rare to see someone score above 60, even 70. So it's just a lot of room for growth still with structuring and running AI efficiently and effectively in different organizations. I would say that specific quiz is showing that full spectrum of capability. So it's not really reflecting where most organizations necessarily will be with AI in 3 to 5 years, because some organizations say AI will deliver a lot more value to them. And when I say I mean like Gen AI tools that are quite popular now, I'm not saying specialized AI image recognition models that are fine-tuned or built custom for a specific use case in, identifying microchip in manufacturers for satellites. We use AI very broadly. AI is, a lot of the incredible stories we hear about AI, they're very specialized models. So I'm just talking about Gen AI, and this is meant to be like, showing you a bit of what the potential is for organizations in the future.
I had a discussion recently with one of my colleagues, and I mentioned that seems to be something very different on the way that marketing was done, like the old school marketing that I've seen or I've heard, and the new AI workflows that are being used today. What is your take on this? What's the difference between like the way you did it before versus the way that you are doing now, or your customers are doing marketing now?
Really simple question. But actually, the reality, the need, articulating the answer to that question take about 45 minutes. And the reason is there's about like 37 specializations in marketing. And
Correct.
some marketers are really impacted by AI, like everyone to do with like copy and writing. Obviously, really, their day-to-days changed massively. Where like, experiential marketing, the people who are out in the streets handing brochures are still marketing, and it's still a specialization, but you don't see them using large language models to help them give out brochures. So it's like the problem is with marketing is when we say marketing, we usually have in mind a very specific aspect of marketing. And like most people think about marketing as advertising, and that's only like acquisition. Marketing is always also retention, right? And people kind of comfortably forget about that, or partnerships. So it's very hard to say AI and marketing because marketing is so large and fragmented. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hone in to very specific areas that I think are either top of mind or interesting to answer that question, to frame it. If we talk about AI more broadly and not necessarily the Gen AI, if you look at what's happening with like Meta ads and Google ads, they're progressively moving towards like machine learning and optimization. But the role of the media buyer with audience selection is diminishing in its value. So that's like on an infrastructure level, the shift that's happening. If you go like, okay, yeah, but that's Meta and Google, I'm more interested in like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and all of the variants, and what is the impact of those in the day-to-day? I'd say when it comes to performance marketing, it's definitely the ability to create and deploy more creatives. And then there's this trend now, especially in like B2C e-commerce, of using AI avatars, so human-generated human lookalikes, to sell ads. And the performance for some of those campaigns can outperform other creatives, like static creatives. So there's like the image generation, video generation aspect of it, which is impacting marketing. One company I was speaking the other day, they are using like AI avatars, and they're using them for different purposes. So one of them I saw just a few days ago, it's for SMBs. They arrive to the website and there's an AI avatar with a speech, and it's doing a lead qualification. And that company spoke to a few people using it, and the results they showed, and it was remarkable. It was like an 8x increase in conversion rate on the website compared to like static form fills. And it's essentially like a sales development rep that's virtual sitting on the website. Now, I wouldn't do that for mid-market or enterprise, but when you're getting large traffic of SMB, small businesses, and you can't stomach the cost of servicing them through a sales rep, then this is a very efficient use case for AI. There's definitely impacting people in the day-to-day, and there's a lot of usage that's hard to measure or track the impact of, with strategic thinking or learning new concepts, conducting research, analysis. I think a lot of that is probably the primary use cases. Content is absolutely in marketing the number one use case that marketers talk about when they're talking about AI. But say all of those, they're very common and prolific. I think I could go until I'm blue in the face. You probably need to stop me 1 second to talk about all the different use cases, because there's so many are popping up, and some of I haven't even started talking about the sophisticated ones yet. I just was talking about like the common popular ones. So do you want me to keep going, or do you want to go?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a very tech-oriented researcher kind of guy, and marketing and even content creation was like a kind of a mystery, kind of here be dragons land. Nobody knows what's going on, at least from my perspective. And you have to do all the kind of things. And I find this very interesting. And you mentioned, for example, avatars on the website. Is like full video kind of avatars, or more like text chatbots? Or how sophisticated was that, for example?
Yeah, that one was it was remarkably sophisticated. So you had the text on the left, saw the Synthesia or Agen generated avatar, so it's a 3D person or AI. As you were talking to the avatar and asking questions about the product, she would spontaneously create a presentation visualizing your question during mid-conversation. I mean, this is a company that raised like good 40, 50 mil. That's obviously a proprietary custom layer that they built on top of a large language model. But it was remarkable to see. I haven't seen that before. So that was like one example of the use case of one of these avatars. I'd say they're probably more common and popular in e-learning and presentation. And something interesting that's happening now that I'm seeing is the not only like personalization of content consumption, but also the presentation and modification of content through personalization. There's a few use cases and examples I've seen. So there's a PDF, and you can talk through voice to an agent about the PDF and ask questions. That's one variant. Another is it changes the content according to information it has about you, like which company you come from, which referrer, your geolocation, what information they have about you in the CRM. And the content on the page will change, but then your interaction with the agent will change because of the context it has about who you are. So that's another use case. Another use case is creating hyper-personalized landing pages. So you run a webinar or an event, and then instead of like, hey, thank you, John, it was great to see you, here's a generic PDF. Hey, John, I created this page for you. And then the page, it's the whole proposition tailored to you and your business and all the information about you on that landing page. So it's essentially one-to-one at scale. So there's lots of different use cases for how people are using the generative AI to curate more hyper-personalized experiences, which essentially just translates into increasing conversion rate.
So two questions on this. First, I saw that at one point on your site, you also mentioned that there's chaos between all these tools that can be used. So both like before LLMs and after LLMs as well. And I'm curious, has that gotten worse recently or not? And the other one is, okay, is it like feasible from a cost perspective? Like, for example, these AI avatars and even the tokens, even Cursor, do you get like value for the money being taken right now?
Tool chaos is absolutely increasing at exponential rate. It's happening on a category level, so vertical specialized tools, both on industry level and function level. So specialized tools for CFOs, specialized tools in go-to-market, specialized tools in insurtech. Right. So all three are happening simultaneously as people are creating new specialized solutions for that specific grouping or challenge. The AI landscape, on my analysis from this, probably about 2-3 months old now, 29,000 websites. If you ask me what will happen by the same time next year, I don't think it's going to double. I'd say it's probably more likely to triple or quadruple by this same time next year. So, and you kind of go like, well, why? And I think there's more people moving into the AI space, and it's easier to deploy more code and graphic design to deploy multiple tools or multiple products faster than ever before. So one person can run 5 separate products, and that, because of that, and the companies themselves who can obviously create lots of tools as a result, just creates a multiplication that was never there before. There's more AI generated content and more AI consuming content than humans. So what happens when even now the tech stack complexity is overwhelming? What happens when that proliferates? What that means is that the tools become progressively specialized and niched, and that the content being generated by AI for AI agents is in order to communicate who these tools serve best, how they solve those problems. And then what happens is there's more of a need for the product owner to reveal publicly the use cases and the audience that they serve, because otherwise they're not going to get through the threshold of an AI lens, an AI filter. So I think it's very interesting when you think about moving to a human augmented and human orchestrated AI creator and selector world. And essentially what that leads to is radical transparency, because you can't convince the AI and have a sales pitch that's emotional. They're less biased towards things that humans are biased for. They're really evaluating it based on criteria that's been defined by the human. Then they're going to go and get all of the criteria and compare against the criteria. So if one product doesn't have as much information available, it is automatically at a disadvantage. And this is different than the world before. You kind of go, well, why is it different? We had search before, because on SEO and search, you had the disproportionate advantage of being on page 1. Page 1 got 98% of the traffic. So you're either on page 1 or you're kind of invisible. Now with AI, you have such a long tail of opportunity and proliferation because of the intensification of AI and this intensification of the content that's being produced. Company who allows to be assessed for the most amount of criteria, which means the most amount of transparency with the content, has a higher probability of winning. So that's like a very different shift because of the long tail that agents and AI enables. So that's question one. Any more comments on that before I move to question two?
Just one that I also asked Gus. Do you see this like degrading in the future? So what you said before, until we get to the dead internet theory, where we all will only have bots talking with bots, and there's nothing for humans there, or not?
So I don't think there's ever going to be a situation that happens, because people want to read from curated subject matter experts that they know, like, and trust. And even though there'll be a progressively increase of reliance, people still want to learn and understand specific subjects rather than outsource everything to do with knowledge acquisition and thinking to an AI. So people still need to do thinking, still need to accumulate knowledge. And as long as people are going to do those two things, there's specific sources you want to consume. But I'd say when it comes to everything that people aren't interested in, but is necessary, then yes, they're going to use AI to help them with those tasks. I'd say it's more that we're moving to a human augmented, where the AI is becoming smarter and faster at helping us get what we want more efficiently and help us think through and plan things. But the desire, the needs, the direction, the destination, that's going to be human-led, but AI influenced. I see. Like, if you said, well, the dead internet, in the sense of like majority is AI generated for AI consumption, we're already there. Is the internet dead? Are any of us using the internet any less? No, not really.
No, it's true,
yeah, not really. So, as long as there's like news to consume and articles to read and tools to interact with and infographics to watch and, videos to see. Yeah, I just don't see why, unless human cognitive function like switches off, and because of frontal degradation due to outsourcing excessive AI use, which, to be honest, at this rate is probably going to be a new disease soon. Yeah, I don't see this dead internet thing happening in that definition. So just to go back to your second question now, I think the ROI on these tools depends on your ability to create value from using them. And fundamentally, it's a question of creativity and positioning in the market and differentiation and brand. So I personally managed to extract insane amounts of ROI on these tools, say 10 to 100x. If I just think about a recent project I ran compared to the cost. I mean, there's a lot of my time, which is probably the majority of the cost for that project. But the tool itself that had enabled it is it ROI? I mean, that's just one example that's immediate that comes to mind. But yeah, there's a lot of examples of the ROI that these tools can generate. I think it's like, how is it being used? What's the problem that it's solving for? But I mean, if you ask me, well, do I think there's wastage, insane volume of wastage of people using it inefficiently or incorrectly, or making very severe mistakes? Like, I don't remember which management consultant it was that, had some sort of Australian government thing, and they used AI, and it was a 400K project. And, so like, if you think about the damage of the cost of that relative to the cost of the AI tool, then your net negative ROI is in the minus, 400,000 or something. So it's like, yes, if it's used incorrectly without proper management or QA, it can be negative ROI. I'd say that's the bigger risk rather than the extraction of ROI, because the cost is, I think it's probably, I can't think of any other time in history that we had something that was that powerful at such a low price point. Like, even, Cursor 200 USD a month, or Gemini Ultra at 250, even ChatGPT API costs in the pennies for thousands of prompts and, 1 million tokens for like 30p. I can't remember what the pricing is. I think Anthropic's like 15 USD for 1 million tokens, which is what, 800,000 words. What's that, like 2 Harry Potter books? Yeah, I don't think we've ever had anything that has the potential to generate. I mean, if I think about how many hours a day I spend on AI and how much I pay for it, I don't think there's anything in my life that comes close to generating that level of value. And I don't think I've ever experienced anything that generates as much value for that price point for the amount of time I use it. Not even a really great computer game, which I've played 2 or 3 times and repeat.
Maybe it's similar with the Industrial Revolution a bit, like the engines that replaced thousands of workers, or more. You see it more than that.
I think there was a stat yesterday that I came across, was that Industrial Revolution created 50x the productivity of what people were able to do then. I don't think AI has reached that yet because of the hallucination rate. I'd say we're closer to maybe a 20-30% rather than a 50,000% increase or something. So I'd say, AI has not yet materialized on an economic scale that level of impact. Do I believe it will?
A good question.
Yeah.
Is AI winter coming or not yet?
I'd say in multiples of productivity, yes. Like if you said to me, do I think AI within the next 5 to 10 years will, relative to now, will increase productivity by at least 100 to 500%? Yes. But will it achieve a 3x increase? It's hard to see how with the current architecture. But if they crack the neural modeling, AI based on how human brains works, then absolutely it will be more than 50x. So it depends on what scientific breakthroughs will materialize. And everyone, when I say everyone, I mean Google, Meta, OpenAI, Microsoft, like all the big boys are betting on this with the infrastructure costs. If you look at I think it's the OPEX costs now with the investments in infrastructure, CapEx, then yes, I believe that they believe that breakthrough is going to happen. To be honest, if you asked me 2 years ago, I'd say I'm skeptical, but I look now at Nano Banana and I look at how smart, the new Gemini model is, even the new Opus 4.5. And I just think, wow, 2 years ago, I look at the image generation and I look now kind of generating images that are almost indistinguishable from what normal human would be able to tell. I'd say, yeah, highly probable. I mean, to be honest, I kind of bet my career on it. So I've kind of gone all in on it with my positioning and my work and what I do. So I guess you're talking to someone who is a believer. Now, as you can see, I'm a cautious believer, not just jumping into it. I'm thinking it through. But yeah, I believe it will unlock it. I think there is an excessive amount of hype. Which is making it ambiguous, so it's hard to see the forest for the trees as a result of the noise.
Yeah, very, very interesting perspective. And I fully agree. You mentioned about some efficient tools. Could you give me like 1 or 2 example on what companies could use for this? Like what exactly do you name like a tool in this context? Something that you can say it's not NDA protected, like what would the company that has 0 on your AI gap score would take as a next step in something like is manageable and they could actually use, for example, or a startup?
I'd say the easiest, highest impact tool, and that is no one really talks about or mentions, is probably Google Colab. Being able to generate, being able to, you go to ChatGPT or Claude, which everyone has, you ask it to create a Python script that will do whatever is going to take you 4.5 hours to do in Excel now. You run it in Google Colab and it can do statistics and data science and analysis work using Python. And I think the secret power for getting the most out of AI now is not trying to, leverage automated workflows with agentic because the hallucination rate is still too high for that to be reliable. I think the error rate is like 89% at the moment. But I'd say it's actually leveraging them to do what they do best, which is generating code. And if you look at like Lovable, Cursor, the reason these companies are scaled is because they're enabling code generation and the AI seems to be really good at that. So I think, why not Cursor? Why Google Code? It's like easy to use. It's free. If you would need a bit more power, it's very cheap. You're already using ChatGPT or Claude to generate a Python script. You can stick it in and run it. And that will enable a lot of people to do a lot of like manual tasks that they would be doing using data analysis relatively easily. That's how I started. I started with running Python scripts in Google Colab 3 years ago.
Very nice. Yeah, it's not talked about a lot. So the first time that I hear it, but it's a great idea. Yeah, I did use Colab like a long time, 20,000 years ago when I did some research, and they had these free GPUs that I could use for short bursts of machine learning. Yeah, very nice. Okay, one last question, because we are closing to our time, is something that I also always ask. The between 0 and 1, it's a bit of a metaphorical name for the podcast. But imagine that at 0, you have like a rock, a dumb rock, and at 1, it's kind of you or an assistant that you trust. Where would you rate current AI between this 0 and 1?
Yeah, so the first thought that comes to mind is that it's what I call a brilliant idiot, in that it's exceptionally good at some things, and I would score those some things as an 8, and then it's really, really terrible at a lot of things, which drops the score. I'd say at the moment probably between a 3 and a 4.
0.35, something like that, right?
0.4. 0.45 probably. But for the specific things it does well, 8, 9. Sometimes it does something and I'm like, wow, that was incredible. Like I don't even know.
Yeah, but we have to look at the average. And the average is not there yet.
Yeah. Oh, you caught me on a day where yesterday I was literally pulling hairs out of my head. Like, you really
So
caught me on the lower end of
what
the spectrum
happened
at the moment.
yesterday? What happened? Were there bugs, or you just didn't understand? There is a thing like model degradation, and I can see it. Like something that worked perfectly an hour ago, maybe the demand increases, and then you get the stupid model that doesn't understand anything. It's like a smaller model. That kind of things, or something else?
No, what you're describing is happening because of context rot, which means as your tokens are increasing in the session, the signal to noise ratio is dropping. And that's down to the way the architecture is, because what the LLM understands, it looks at the relationship between every word in the context you've given it to every other word. So if you have 1,000 words, it's like 1 times 999, 1 times 998, and you sum that up. The bigger the content you're giving it, it's starting to really get confused as to what's relevant, and because of the way the transformer operates. So that's why that's happening. It's not that it's opting for a stupider model or it's going back. It's just that even smart models get overwhelmed when there's too much context. There's context degradation. That's in that instance. No, that's not what happened with me. And what happened with mine was I hit obstacles on all of my projects at the same time for different reasons. And it's like, it's not like one of them was working well. For example, yesterday I spent hours trying to get it to export a very long presentation. It's like 140 slides long into Figma. And, you had to go through all the different permutations of how to do that with SVG files. So it was able to create beautiful websites and visualize the graphs perfectly, but it wasn't able to take the same perfect visualization it created for a website and translate that into a Figma design. So I spent hours trying to figure out how to do that. And in the end, just realized it's not capable of doing that. So it was pretty frustrating. Then I had another one. I have like 1.6 million profiles for marketers that I'm analyzing, skills and the job title change to create a trend tool. And then the third one, I had like 100 publications for gaming for like a project for a PR company. And, it's hundreds of thousands of articles I need to fetch. And it's just proving very difficult to get the AI to pull the right content from the websites, because the websites are very different and the models don't work. Just scraping is a complicated topic that's quite specialized. So that's it. I ended up bouncing between these projects, trying to get them to work. And I ended up pulling a lot of hair out, realizing the limitations of the AI in each one of these.
I completely understand that. But I believe it's more like lots on your plate more than the limitation. I mean, the limitations were most likely always there, but now you like bumped into them at the same time. Just a bad day, I would say.
Yes. Yeah. Or maybe an excessively ambitious day. It's my expectation, because I think sometimes it does such an incredible job. Like I remember like on Thursday, I did something. I was like, this is like I remember I sent a WhatsApp message to a friend. Like, he said, this is so incredible. Like we're totally out of a job. And then yesterday I was like, we still have our jobs for at least another 30 years. Like, I remember just sending 2 messages back to back. And, I think it's like you get so excited because it blows your mind. And then you're like, oh, why is it so stupid with this space amount of like, it's like huge amounts of code. So like trying to go and unpick and understand what it did, how it did it, why it did it, just like it takes forever.